My name is Alex. I grew up in a broken family, raised by a controlling mom and her interfering sisters. Megan, the older sister, was 13 years older than me, and Anna was 10 years older. I guess I was an unplanned child, the culprit of my parents' separation. Dad left in 1977 when I was 5 years old and never came back. Throughout my childhood, I was plagued by bullying both at home and at school. All I wanted was a mother who would love me, a simple gesture of recognition that was never made. Despite the difficulties, I studied well, giving 12 years of my life to study. Time passed, and in 1993, I found myself at Kingston University in South London, grateful for the opportunity to leave home life. It was there that I met Holly, and I still remember her image clearly. She radiated beauty and confidence, while I remained shy and withdrawn. Holly was finishing her final year of creative writing, unlike me, who was aiming for a master's degree in mechanical engineering and design. As I mentioned, I was too timid to approach her while she was easily attracted to men. 165 centimeters tall with brown hair and mesmerizing brown eyes, she possessed a beauty that seemed unattainable to me. The men who tried to win her over were sociable and popular. To my surprise, one of Holly's friends started a conversation with me at a party, which eventually led to our acquaintance. Despite my limited experience with women, my modesty and shyness seemed to attract her. Having gathered enough courage, I asked her out on a date, and we started dating. I'm not ashamed to admit that she gave up my innocence, but after about 6 months, there were rumors about her affair with other men. I could not confirm these statements and did not dare to talk to her about this topic. Holly was a spoiled child, a client of her parents and her sister Caroline, which strained our relationship. I accepted her selfish behavior, her penchant for creating public scenes, which made me feel embarrassed. Despite my friend's insistence that I break off the relationship, I found myself in love, a feeling I had never experienced before. After graduation, we both found jobs and rented an apartment outside of Southampton in New Hampshire. We were attracted there by Holly's family ties, while I severed ties with my family a long time ago. We got married a year later, and the following year we welcomed Sophie into the world, and a couple of years later AITA appeared. Holly enjoyed motherhood, and everything between us seemed perfect. Over time, I have progressed in my career, eventually joining Walker Engineering 10 years ago. The increased salary and bonuses helped us save up for a nicer house. But like many during the economic downturn of 2008, it was a difficult year. Many people lost their jobs, and it became more difficult to win contracts, forcing us to work more hours without additional pay. It was during this period, when both girls went to full-time school, that I learned about Holly's cheating with one of her former classmates. Forgetting about work, I remained ignorant until it was too late. At first I was unsure about the identity of her lover, but Toby suspected a classmate who moved in next door. The confrontation with Holly turned out to be unsuccessful. She waved away my fears with laughter, despite the fact that I felt her deception. However, the stability of my job and income put me in a good position to purchase a beautiful home. Holly was constantly trying to persuade me to buy a house that reflected our status, whatever that meant. Despite my doubts, I agreed, and we purchased a beautiful 5-bedroom house in Southampton. There was a favorable market, so we were able to undermine it well, despite the slightly overpriced mortgage. However, I did one unusual thing for myself. I opened a new savings account in my own name only. I only contributed my share of the bonus there, and since I handled all the finance and banking operations as the sole breadwinner, I doubt Holly even knew about it, even if I showed her the checks. Looking back, it was one of the smartest things I could have done. I needed some security because I wasn't sure if Holly was planning to leave me if her ex came back. After this incident, everything seemed to be back to normal, and my daughters remained my top priority. I devoted myself to the education of my children and spent a lot of time with them on weekends, taking them to various activities such as dancing, concerts, and trips to the zoo. Holly always seemed too busy with her walks with Ible and idle friends. I rarely interacted with other husbands, but we all seemed to be controlled in some way by our wives to varying degrees. My friends used to make fun of me by singing Under My Thumb by the Rolling Stones when I had to cancel plans because of Holly's wishes. Even at work, my colleagues made comments about my marital situation, especially about Holly's dominance over me. All this went on until a few months ago. Ava had just left for university, leaving Holly and me alone for the first time in 18 years. Both of our daughters went to study at our old alma mater. When I was helping Ava settle into a new apartment with her sister, she turned to me and asked why I was still with her mother. I was stunned because Ava was always silent, just like her old man. I heard that she goes left with Henry Walker at work, Ava said, bursting into tears. It was news to me, but I wasn't shocked. For years, I could investigate her infidelities, but I refrained from doing so, fearing that it would destroy the family and make my daughters feel resentment towards her, like my sisters towards their father. I tolerated her infidelity because I couldn't bear to lose what we had created, even though I still loved her. This revelation caused me several effects. First, it showed me the depth of the daughters' dislike for their mother, much greater than I had imagined. Secondly, it awakened old feelings related to my upbringing and how they affected my weaknesses. Finally, I realized that I had become the object of gossip and ridicule at work, especially from Henry Walker, who, coincidentally, was the owner's nephew and the man who betrayed me. I felt hopelessly lost, unable to continue to endure this situation, especially now that my youngest daughter realized the bullying from Holly. I knew I had to confront her. My heart was racing as I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Holly to return. When she finally appeared, I was unable to speak again. She just looked at me with an air of indifference and contempt as she unpacked her bags. In the end, I mustered up the courage to speak. I asked Holly about the nature of her relationship with someone else. She replied that she would not call it an affair and insisted that it was not so significant. I felt a mixture of shock and disgust, waiting for her to explain how her actions could be justified. She expressed her admiration for me as a supportive and friendly husband, but acknowledged that there were certain needs that I could not meet. I was puzzled by her direct confession and asked if that meant she was cheating on me. Holly explained that this only concerns her body, not her heart or mind. Stunned by her audacious confession, I remained speechless. She mentioned reproachfully that she was researching relationships with young men. Startled, I raised my voice, asking about her actions. Holly warned me not to scream, and despite admitting that she was involved with 2 other men, she expected my silence. She threatened me with the choice of accepting her terms or risking her leaving for someone else. I was silent, hoping that she would notice the pain on my face. Trying to justify her actions, she claimed that such behavior is common among her friends and can even improve a marriage. I was outraged by her attempt to use the actions of her friends as a justification, considering it despicable and self-centered. Questioning by her action the suggestion of having another woman, she laughed at the suggestion, mocking my ability to communicate with other women. She confidently stated that our relationship would continue according to her rules, warning me not to spoil a good thing because of this. Actually, she was right. During our 22-year relationship, I have shown unwavering loyalty and agreement with her wishes. Now everyone knew that I had been betrayed, tarnishing my reputation among friends and colleagues. The next morning, I walked into my office and met Henry Walker, a man who is related to my wife. With a grin, he asked how Alex was doing, and his grin piqued my irritation. I decided to keep quiet. Next to the coffee machine, I heard some men laughing. Despite their amusement, I continued on my way, feeling naked. Even Olivia, the boss's secretary, seemed to find my situation funny. Sitting at my desk, I reflected on the difficult start of the day, feeling ridiculous both at work and at home. Despite my efforts to focus, I continued to feel angry. I decided to study the history of my father, knowing only the place of his birth and his county at the age of 38 in 1977. Searching through Cambridgeshire family history sites, I found several potential matches. Inside the underwear, there was a small note that said, "Please return this to your wife." I was devastated. I sat at my desk and cried once again that day. Instead of blaming myself, I wanted to blame everyone else for my pain. I couldn't wait any longer. When Saturday arrived, I told Holly that I was going to visit a friend in London, and she seemed completely indifferent to my plans. I suspected that she would be unfaithful, so being away made it easier for her. The journey to Cambridge was stressful, and I ended up arriving at Rachel's house an hour later than expected. To my surprise, she greeted me with the warmest hug I had received in years, seemingly unaffected by the delay. I met her husband Greg and their children Grace and William. We dove into conversations about my father and our newfound family, and Rachel's kind and selfless nature was evident as she and Greg spoke passionately, often finishing each other's sentences. David and Lucy Price, my cousin and Rachel's brother, joined us, and we quickly bonded, exchanging stories and insights about our family. After lunch, we took a short trip, which gave me a chance to reflect. When we returned, David and I discussed our jobs and family lives, and for some reason I found myself confiding in my new cousins. They offered unwavering support and advised me not to tolerate my current situation. Leaving Cambridge, I felt a renewed perspective. Enduring countless lies and mistreatment, the kindness and honesty shown by my newfound family gave me hope. I realized that I needed to reclaim my own happiness, not just for myself, but also for my daughters, friends, and this new family. When I returned home at 8 p.m., I found Holly getting ready to go out. I asked her about her plans, and she casually mentioned that she was going out with her friends. I caught her off guard when I brought up her affair with Max. She pleaded with me to stop mentioning it, clearly indifferent to my feelings. I urged her to stop and be faithful to me as her husband. Dismissing my concerns, she assured me that she was and always would be my wife. She asked me not to deny her pleasures and promised to make life easy for me, insisting that she would be back by midnight. Ignoring my pleas, she continued to threaten and try to embrace me as I turned away. Unfazed, she grabbed her luxury handbag and headed towards the door. Asserting my role as her husband, I sternly asked her not to proceed with her plans. She paused, looking at me as if questioning my authority, and then burst into laughter. Mockingly, she asked what I would do, asserting that I would never have the courage to leave her, and predicting that I would always be there for her. Crestfallen, I lowered my head, realizing that I had been a fool for far too long, catering to her selfishness while neglecting my own needs. It was time to end the charade and make plans for change. I wasted no time in taking action. In fact, I began while she was out with Henry or Max, perhaps both of them together. That was likely what she meant by indulging in her desires and having it all. My thoughts fueled my anger, causing me to lose focus. I needed to find a way to sever any remaining affection I held for her, and I believed I had found a solution. I located the box that contained a specific picture of my mom and sisters, the only one I had. Though skeptical, I cut out a picture of Holly's face and pasted it next to them. With no love left for my own family, adding Holly's smirking face to the picture might just sever my emotional ties. I placed it on my study desk around 12:45 a.m. and completed the task. I had mostly planned my short-term goals, even though executing them might take a few weeks. Luckily, I had the luxury of time as Holly wasn't anticipating my departure. Though uncertain and in need of assistance, I had convinced myself by then to follow through. I heard someone entering clumsily through the door, and as I peeked out the window, I witnessed Henry Walker leaving. As I heard Holly ascending the stairs, I quickly cleared my browsing history, vowing to use incognito mode from then on. After she retired to our bedroom, I went downstairs to make some coffee. As I reflected on my future away from this toxic environment, even without my daughters, it became more and more tolerable. Deciding to relocate closer to my daughters come Monday morning, I went to work with a newfound resolution not to exert myself any longer. Unfazed by the snide remarks and laughter directed at me, I scheduled a bank meeting for 1 p.m., using the time before to carefully review my finances. Although it was risky, if successful, and with the right support, I could emerge from this situation relatively unscathed. The meeting went according to plan, allowing me to close my savings account and remove my name from our joint account. With a substantial sum in hand, I closed the savings account and withdrew the cash. On my way back to the office, I made a detour to a tech store, purchasing 2 digital voice recorders, a 500 GB USB 3.0 TUF drive, and a new PC hard drive. Upon my return, I immediately began accessing the company's private customer files. It took me an hour to crack Jack's password. Ironically, it was his wife's name and his 6-digit birthday. With the necessary access obtained, I downloaded all the files onto my drive, along with my plans and designs for the energy-efficient hydraulic pump system that would position the company for continued success. We produced pumps for various industries, including air conditioning units, heavy machinery, and even the dairy industry. After clearing my computer history, which included all the plans and work I had done, I shut it down. I replaced the hard drive with a new one, packed everything into my bag, and reinstalled Windows. The rest of the day was spent conducting research on competitors using my phone and browsing engineering jobs in the South London Surrey area on Monster before calling it a day. Later that evening, after a quiet dinner, I retreated to my study. I came across an interesting opportunity. A major competitor that had struggled during the financial downturn was seeking a mechanical engineer for basic design and shop floor management. While not exactly what I desired, it was close enough. Despite their offer of a lower salary by $10,000 compared to my current one, I promptly emailed them my CV. I also made sure to sleep in our marital bed that night to maintain appearances with Holly, although I pretended to be asleep when she entered. Her touch made me feel nauseous, but strangely I took some pleasure in reacting this way. I was becoming repulsed by her, and that would ultimately assist me in the long run. The next day, I received a surprised phone call from Robert Williams at Sutton Hydraulics. He couldn't believe that I was considering leaving Walker Engineering for his smaller firm. While he almost immediately offered me the job, I requested an interview the following day, which he agreed to. Another crucial piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, and things were progressing rapidly. Having ample time on my hands, I started researching flats in the area. Eventually, I found one that was just 15 minutes away from my daughter's place and only 5 minutes from work. I scheduled a viewing for the day after my interview with Robert Williams. After that, I informed Jack that I needed to visit my daughter in Kingston the next day to sign some papers, and he casually agreed. That night, I called my longtime friend Toby Brown and arranged to meet him and his wife Sarah the following evening after my interview and flat viewing. Toby and Sarah knew that something was on my mind, and they anxiously awaited my explanation. Prior to meeting them, I spoke to my daughters about the situation, and they were supportive and understanding. During the gathering with Toby and Sarah, I revealed the initial phase of my plans. Their surprise at my decision to fight back outweighed any shock over Holly's infidelity, which they saw as a common occurrence. Sarah inquired about my decision to leave Holly and offered me another cup of tea. I recounted the revelations from the meeting with my cousins, including my mother's expulsion of my father from the house and my sisters siding with her. I mentioned that my daughters were supporting me this time. Toby expressed concern and questioned if the discovery at the meeting had prompted me to stand up for myself. I clarified that it was during a visit to my father's grave when I noticed something on the stone that shocked me and led to my decision to leave. Both Toby and Sarah asked simultaneously about what I had seen on the memorial stone. I shared that it featured an image of a rose with the words, "In loving memory," followed by my father's birth date and age at passing, which just so happened to be the same as my current age. Toby and Sarah slightly recoiled, indicating their understanding. I explained that I faced a choice when confronted with moments that could lead to drinking or worse, as my grandmother believed. I made the decision not to follow in my father's footsteps and instead chose to fight back. Continuing on, I revealed that I could no longer sacrifice myself trying to be the perfect husband, enduring mistreatment and ridicule. I confessed to my friends, feeling vulnerable about how low I had sunk. Sarah offered her help and shared her plan to protect herself and get back at Holly. I smiled and nodded, appreciating Sarah's toughness despite previous suspicions of her affair. As I explained my financial strategy, I revealed that in 2008, I had established a separate savings account where I deposited all my bonuses and extra cash. Acquiring a mortgage only required my name, making it easier for me to apply a loan. I outlined Toby's role in transferring ownership of my house to a new company that he would create to settle the mortgage, transferring the deeds through the land registry. Toby voiced skepticism about the plan, but I assured him that Holly wouldn't have the means to contest it. I pointed out that her religious parents, upon discovering her infidelity, would prioritize their principles over supporting her. They both agreed and even offered to help cover the mortgage, allowing me to delay payment. On the way home, I visited a local Land Rover dealership, where I arranged to exchange Holly's car for the latest model. We terminated the payment plan for the Range Rover Sport that she had, which benefited the dealership from reselling it. I assured the dealer that I would come back for an upgrade, knowing that he would be able to reimburse the cost of Holly's car by selling it almost as new. I apologized for the inconvenience, but explained that the prospect of selling me a new expensive Range Rover more than makes up for it. When I left, I took the brochure for 2016, but not for myself, but for Holly. When she got home, she was sitting in the living room, sipping coffee and looked pale. I took off my jacket and threw my bag on the floor, preparing to carry out the second part of the plan. I expressed my love for Holly and wished her all the best. I stated that I would exchange her car and buy her a new 2017 model, pointing it out in the brochure. Expressing her enthusiasm, she exclaimed that she liked the new car, unaware of my plan. She acknowledged my ability to make her feel better by mentioning the only catch was that they already had a buyer for my car. She offered to take him to the dealership on Friday afternoon, leaving work early to complete an assignment. She offered to use her car for the weekend to go on a Friday afternoon, leaving work early to complete an assignment. She offered to use her car for the weekend to visit her lovers, which made her recoil at the last remark. An expression of shock and confusion appeared on her face. After asking what happened, I advised her to look into the situation. She didn't mention anything specific, but asked if I was still upset about our arrangement. I explained that this was not our agreement, but rather hers, stressing that I had no say in the matter. I asked if I had no choice but to accept it, hoping for an answer. She just nodded, looking like she had established her dominance, and I gave up. Despite the circumstances, she declared that she loved me, expressing sincere concern. I didn't say anything in response and went into the kitchen. My phone started ringing, so I headed to the back garden to answer the call. Toby confirmed that the money had been transferred. The next day, I was ready to leave. Without delay, I entered the bank and was shown into the office of a mortgage specialist. An hour later, the mortgage was paid and all my remaining accounts were closed. I went down a few doors and opened a new account at another bank. I was happy knowing that I wouldn't have to pay anything anymore unless Holly sued me. My smile disappeared. The next day, I contacted the land registry and filled out the relevant online application, with all the details about Toby and Sarah's new company. Within 10 minutes of submitting the application, I received a confirmation email saying it would take 3 to 5 days. As soon as everything is ready, I'll just hand over the documents to Toby, and he can register ownership of his company. That same day, I knocked on Jack's door. Olivia was with him, as usual. He usually got his way on Fridays, and I think I interrupted their intimate relationship. She left us alone. After putting my resignation letter on his desk, he looked at me with a silly grin on his face. He asked about the document I was holding in my hands. I replied that this was my resignation, and expressed my conviction that it would be best to leave immediately, given the situation with our families. I assumed that he might not want me around for too long. He seemed stunned by the news. I boldly demanded that my P45 be ready by Monday, and stressed that it was not worth mentioning my departure to anyone Holly didn't know. He pleaded plaintively, insisting that they needed me. I objected, saying that obviously they needed his nephew more. I informed him that I would be back on Monday to pick up the last of my things. I imperceptibly pretended to drop the pin from my pocket and took the opportunity to take the digital recorder out of my sock. Having built a pin for him, I pressed record and discreetly shoved it under the seat and into the wooden frame when I got to my feet. Concluding the conversation, I mentioned that I had things to do and left his office. At parting, I told him not to crawl back when he was penniless, assuming that the only thing keeping his cheating wife with him was his money. I smiled, knowing that it struck a chord. I turned and left his office. An hour later, I drove home, picked up Holly's car in the logbook, and left her car at the dealership. John Reeves kindly offered to give me a ride home, and I gratefully agreed. When I got home that evening, Holly was sitting at the kitchen table with big red bags under her eyes. I knew she was crying. I asked her what happened. Reluctantly, she told me that she had contracted gonorrhea. I laughed. Oh, was I laughing? She just glared at me. He offered to take medication to get back to normal, and the tension in the air became palpable. That night, for the first time in months, I slept well. The next morning, I slept in the guest room and felt refreshed. A good night's sleep has done wonders for me. I went into our bedroom and gently woke Holly up, explaining that I was giving her time to rest and recuperate. Holly expressed her belief that I found her disgusting, to which I remained silent. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she confessed that she had ruined everything. She confessed her love for me and expressed her desire for me to get better. At first, I felt sympathy for her, but she disappeared faster than expected. That surprised me. Then it dawned on me that I had lost all affection for the woman I had been married to for 21 years. Could love really fade away so quickly? Obviously it was, because I was done, and her situation didn't affect me in any way. I left the room. Without saying a word, I got into my car and drove away satisfied. That evening, I stayed with Toby and Sarah, who hosted a dinner party attended by many friends and colleagues. When I got home late Sunday morning, I found Holly doing housework. When she entered the living room, she rushed to me and hugged me when she saw me. I just patted her on the back. Excited, I offered to arrange the delivery of a new car, offering to drop her off in the city so she could meet her sister, who could then take her to the dealership. I imagined her returning in a new Range Rover, and she smiled as she came up to me with open arms. Turning back to the kettle, I pretended not to notice her. Throughout the day, Holly showed excessive affection, making me feel uncomfortable. She persistently tried to kiss or hug me, but I kept finding excuses to leave. Before going to bed, I noticed that she was crying again. After wishing her a good night, she asked if I would sleep with her and expressed a desire to cuddle up and hear reassurances. Feeling nothing, I replied that this would not happen until she received all the explanations from the doctor. I firmly stated that she made her bed, to which she bitterly objected, stating that when she got better, she was sure she could find a man willing to go to bed with her, since she had a lot of lost time to make up for. I chuckled to myself. It took longer than expected, but it was not there, and the severity returned. All the regrets about Friday night have disappeared, leaving behind 21 years of resentment. In the past, I would have succumbed to her manipulations, but this time I ignored her tears and headed for the spare room. It would be my last night in my house, and it would be in the guest room. I also felt relieved that she said these things. It erased any remaining doubts I might have had. When I looked at my fake photo of her and my sisters, all I felt was hatred for her. She was sweet only when she wanted something, and nasty when she didn't get it. I woke up early on Monday morning. Holly also got up early to make an appointment with the hairdresser at 8:30. So I took her to the city as planned. I left knowing that I might be seeing her for the last time. I was afraid it wouldn't happen, but I was determined to make it happen. On the way, I called the mobile phone company and terminated both of our contracts. When I stopped at the parking lot, I paid the fine with my card. They informed me that the phones would be working until 5 p.m., then I went to the office to pick up my P45. I entered the factory, where I was greeted by a gloomy atmosphere. Word of my departure seems to have spread, prompting a moment of startled stares from my colleagues. Unsure of the reason for their concern, I headed down the hall to my office, passing by the coffee maker where the usual company was gathered. Unsure if Max and Henry knew about their shared connection with my wife, they smiled at me while exchanging jokes with others. I greeted them with fake cheerfulness, saying good morning. They'd asked about my wife, prompting the usual laughter at a recurring joke that I didn't find funny. I replied that she was not doing well, explaining that one of them had given her an unpleasant surprise. I let them in stunned silence, and when I looked back, their jaws dropped, which led to a commotion before I headed upstairs. When she approached Olivia, she smiled slightly and lowered her head, perhaps showing that I now deserve some respect. He seemed pleased, and I hope I brightened up his day. At 2 p.m., I was sitting and waiting for the call, found some paint thinner in the garage and poured it on the wedding dress in the garden. Just as I was about to light the fireplace, my phone rang. I answered calmly, and Holly's voice came on the line, demanding to know what was going on. I replied sarcastically, asking her what she meant. Insisting that I shouldn't play dumb, she continued to question me. I asked her to calm down and asked what was going on. There was silence, and I could hear her heavy breathing and what sounded like her sister's voice in the background. She mentioned that she was told that I didn't buy her a new car, but instead sold it. Teasingly, I mentioned that I might have forgotten to mention it. She panicked, asking what was going on. Remaining calm despite my pounding heart, I informed her that from now on, if she needed a car, she could pay for it herself. She screamed back, expressing confusion and disappointment. I repeated that she had heard me perfectly, and added that I needed to clean up the kitchen. She asked if it was some kind of stupid joke, to which I said nothing. She stated that we would talk about it when she returned home, expressing her displeasure at being played. I didn't say anything. I hung up the phone while she kept shouting my name. Outside, I struck a match and lit the funeral pyre. Our story burned to the ground when I left. Taking our marriage certificate out of my pocket, I tore it to shreds and left it on the kitchen table next to our only photo at Disneyland, capturing happier times. I wondered if she remembered those moments fondly too. I slipped into my car and drove away. As I approached the end of the street, I caught a glimpse of Holly and Jennifer in the rearview mirror, who ran into the house without even looking up. With a smile, I turned off the phone and drove on. By 4 p.m., I got to Sutton. Deciding that I had time, I went to the nearest phone store to sign a new mobile phone contract. Jack appeared at the door before I could knock. He said he had what I needed and told me to take it and get out. Perhaps this respect was just my imagination. When I entered his office, I sat down, discreetly putting the dictaphone in my pocket from under the chair. I knew he had a regular Friday night date with Olivia, and now I recorded it. He snapped back, asking if I had another job. After ignoring him at first, I relented and replied that I had nothing planned. A grin played on his face, probably suggesting that I would crawl back. I asked about my salary for the last month and the bonus at the end of the year, to which he burst out laughing. Olivia came in with my P45, and when she asked what was funny, Jack explained that I had requested my bonus and salary, considering them rich. Olivia intervened, laughing with me. Deciding to join in, I responded with laughter, causing them to stop and stare at me in disbelief. Olivia asked why I was laughing, and I replied by asking her why she let the old man use her every week. My laughter intensified and they froze, Olivia's eyes widened, and Jack turned red with rage. In response to Jack's anger, he spat out, calling me a scoundrel and ordering me to get out of his office and his company before he ordered the guys to pull me out by the ears. Chuckling, I left, taking the last of my things from the office. Still chuckling to myself, I drove home, unloaded the back seats, opened the trunk and entered the house. As I looked around the rooms, I wondered what to take with me. I took out some of Romero Brito's works, wrapped them in plastic I found in the garage, and loaded them into my car. I went around the house collecting various things, then emptied my closet upstairs. I took out all my important documents from the safe, including the girls' birth certificates and my wedding certificate. Using the ladder to the attic, I took out my old things, including my diploma and family photos. In the master bedroom, I collected all the jewelry that Holly had given me over the years, worth more than £10,000. I also took all the bags, shoes, and expensive coats that I bought. In fact, the entire wardrobe was my purchase, so I claimed it all. Considering that I keep careful records for insurance purposes, it would be beneficial to sell everything. When I finished packing, I realized that I would need a TV, so I brought it along with my movie collection and Blu-ray player. By this time, my car was full. I decided to throw away all of Holly's clothes and a few other unnecessary items, including some of my old clothes. A new me will need a new wardrobe, and the girls will be happy to help me. There was no particular rush, as Holly would not be back until after 2 p.m. I took a moment to drink a cup of tea. Be sure to call the TV company and turn off the satellite connection and the internet. I also contacted British Gas and Southern Water to cancel utility payments. It would have taken a few days, but I didn't care. I went back to the bedroom and sat on the bed, when I noticed something that gave me an idea that scared even me. Holly's wedding dress was at the top of the wardrobe in an old dusty box. She probably liked it more than I did. I took it off and found our wedding album among the box of photos on the bed. She grabbed the duvet cover, gathered everything, and headed to the garden. I piled everything up, including Holly's clothes and other things that I couldn't sell. I left her underwear untouched. I didn't want any reminders. I closed the car and checked the time. It wasn't until 13:45 that I called Robert Williams and told him that I would pick up my P45 later with the night shift so that I could start all over again tomorrow. He seemed pleased, and I hoped I'd brighten up his day. At 2 p.m., I was sitting and waiting for the call, found some paint thinner in the garage and poured it on the wedding dress in the garden. Just as I was about to light the fireplace, my phone rang. I answered calmly, and Holly's voice came on the line, demanding to know what was going on. I replied sarcastically, asking her what she meant. Insisting that I shouldn't play dumb, she continued to question me. I asked her to calm down and asked what was going on. There was silence, and I could hear her heavy breathing and what sounded like her sister's voice in the background. She mentioned that she was told that I didn't buy her a new car, but instead sold it. Teasingly, I mentioned that I might have forgotten to mention it. She panicked, asking what was going on. Remaining calm despite my pounding heart, I informed her that from now on, if she needed a car, she could pay for it herself. She screamed back, expressing confusion and disappointment. I repeated that she had heard me perfectly, and added that I needed to clean up the kitchen. She asked if it was some kind of stupid joke, to which I said nothing. She stated that we would talk about it when she returned home, expressing her displeasure at being played. I didn't say anything. I hung up the phone while she kept shouting my name. Outside, I struck a match and lit the funeral pyre. Our story burned to the ground when I left. Taking our marriage certificate out of my pocket, I tore it to shreds and left it on the kitchen table next to our only photo at Disneyland, capturing happier times. I wondered if she remembered those moments fondly too. I slipped into my car and drove away. As I approached the end of the street, I caught a glimpse of Holly and Jennifer in the rearview mirror, who ran into the house without even looking up. With a smile, I turned off the phone and drove on. By 4 p.m. I got to Sutton. Deciding that I had time, I went to the nearest phone store to sign a new mobile phone contract. In addition, I caught the administrators at work to sort out my P45 and met Freya, my new secretary, who, unlike Olivia, exuded professionalism despite her youth. Back in my empty apartment, I brewed a cup of tea using a kettle borrowed from home. I unpacked and ordered pizza for dinner. After checking my old phone, I found that it was disconnected. A smirk slid across my lips, knowing that Holly wasn't on the phone anymore either, giving the girls some respite before my inevitable contact. I spread my sleeping bag in the living room and waited for dinner. The furniture will be delivered over the weekend, but so far I've been enjoying the distance from Holly. Turning on my laptop, I looked through the records from Jack Walker's office revealing his affair with Olivia. After downloading the evidence, I made copies on USB drives, addressing them to Jack's wife Margaret and Olivia's boyfriend Peter. I plan to mail them the next day. Finally, I called my daughter Sophie to give her the latest news, warning her not to inform her mother of my whereabouts, which she has not yet done, given Holly's lack of communication facilities. Over the next week, I furnished my apartment and began to reorient clients from Walker Engineering to Sutton. Despite the fact that some were loyal to Jack, most preferred our offers, which led to Walker's losses. I expected Jack to discover the reason for the decline of his business, but remained indifferent. Since the utilities were turned off in my former home, Holly would have noticed my absence as she was struggling with bills. Toby initiated the process of selling the house, supported by Sarah's enthusiasm, and by the end of the week the property was decorated with signs. During this time, Ava contacted me, telling me about Holly's move to her parents' house, where they still disapproved of her infidelity. Holly was seething with rage towards me, which, oddly enough, gave me pleasure, although I knew that the saga was not over yet. Over the weekend, Toby and Sarah organized another successful dinner party, giving me a break from my escape plan. Sunday brought promising news. After just a week on the market, I received 2 serious offers worth £550,000, one of which I accepted immediately. In preparation for completion, I made ice cream for the girls and the investment, providing Toby with compensation and providing some cash for my safety. Protecting yourself remained a priority. As the week progressed, Toby's news that the sale could start quickly filled me with delight. I immediately contacted the relocation company, instructing them to clear my former house. Meanwhile, the girls contacted their mother, who reacted with increased anger and threats. After assuring the girls that the riots would end soon, I offered them comfort. On Tuesday morning, during a conversation with a new client who recently met with Jack Walker to discuss a possible contract extension, I learned about the plight of Walker Engineering. The client reported that due to significant project losses, the company had to lay off 50% of its staff. He also informed me of Mrs. Walker's decision to divorce Jack because of his infidelity. Despite this revelation, I felt no sympathy. My mind was busy calculating the commissions. Although I remained in the dark about the fate of Olivia and her boyfriend, I knew that he had received my gift. Whether Mrs. Walker got hers or not, the reason for their impending divorce was undoubtedly clear. I wondered what Mrs. Walker's friends and family would think of her affair with an older man. In recognition of my efforts, I was rewarded with a brand new Land Rover Discovery SE. Although I was going to treat myself in advance, Robert and the executives were so pleased with my work and the development of the company that they gave me a car along with a significant commission exceeding £30,000. Looking at my new car from the window of my office, I was stunned when a familiar Ford Focus pulled into the parking lot. I found out that the car belongs to Diana, Holly's mother. Anticipating the inevitable confrontation, I braced myself when my work phone rang. My secretary Freya informed me that there was a woman in the waiting room who claimed to be my wife. I told her to tell the woman that I had an appointment and that I would be down in an hour. 3 hours later, I looked out the window and saw that she was still waiting. Sighing, I decided to leave for the night, ready to meet her face to face if necessary or just drive past if she didn't notice me. I went out the side door and headed for my car. When I was about to get into the car, I heard the screeching of tires, and before I knew it, she blocked my way with her car. When she came out, she rushed at me with fury, obvious from her disheveled appearance. Clearly upset and wearing worn clothes that seemed to belong to her sister, her disheveled hair added to her mess. "You're a fucking idiot," she screamed, trying to hit me, but missed. Enraged, she demanded retribution. Urging her to calm down, I invited her to sit with me in the car. Surprised by the sight of the new car, she told me about her financial difficulties and begged me to come back. I informed her that because I couldn't meet her needs and didn't match her young lovers, I felt like an outsider in her life. Then she begged me to come home, expressing a desire to sort out the situation and forgive me. I couldn't believe my ears and asked if she was joking. She confirmed that she forgave me for ruining her things in her life. Doubting her forgiveness, I pointed out the open deception, disrespect, and her audacity to demand forgiveness. I firmly stated that I would never be with her again, and coldly suggested that she go to one of her lovers. She mentioned that her friends treated her differently now that they had broken up, and their husbands questioned their loyalty. While acknowledging some responsibility for her misfortunes, I still sympathized with her. She admitted that she faced the consequences of her actions, squandering a good life out of greed and disrespect. Despite that, I knew I had to move forward. She begged me to come back into her life, claiming that she had nothing left. She asked about her share of the house and mentioned the need for a divorce. I pointed out that she never once said she loved me, saying she just needed me, but I didn't need her. I told him that I had not paid the mortgage and lost the house, admitting to lying. Her reaction was shock, and I understood the purpose of her visit. When she announced my desire for a divorce, she desperately begged, claiming that she loved me. After more than 20 years of marriage, she pleaded, admitting a mistake and demanding severe punishment. I stressed that it was a huge, unforgivable mistake, firmly stating that I would never return to it. She screamed and begged, filling the car with her screams. After making the offer, I offered to break up completely and offered £30,000 in cash if she would agree. Her behavior changed and she became determined. She screamed, threatening to sue me for everything, claiming that I hadn't lost the house and was too smart for that. Admitting she was right, I found myself on the defensive. I began by stating firmly that she would not receive a penny from me. She came to meet me halfway, and I explained that I would fight with her for everything and even more. I claimed that she had no money and I would move my assets so that it would be difficult for her to track them. I warned her that by the time her lawyer found something, the account would have wiped out any profits. I gave her a choice: take the money offered or face the consequences of the trial without interrupting eye contact. She angrily exclaimed, expressing love and accusing me of abuse. She continued by stating that thanks to her, our girls will thrive by contrasting their future strengths with her perceived flaws. I told her to take the money and get out of my life, and she spat back, agreeing to take the money and get a divorce. I replied that I would arrange it, and she got out of my car, slamming the door. A moment later, she sped out of the parking lot. The next day, I initiated the divorce process, citing adultery as the basis. A week later, I made an appointment with Holly at the girls' apartment. Despite the completed sale of my house, I postponed investing until the documents were signed. It was not easy to be polite in front of the girls. I handed Holly the cash, and she started signing the papers. After saying goodbye to the girls and wishing Holly luck, I got ready to leave. Holly suddenly burst into tears, although I felt it could have been more for the benefit of the girls. Sophie and Ava exchanged knowing glances. Ava mentioned that she would see me next weekend, referring to the Coldplay concert, which they were thrilled about. I returned to the room where Holly was still sobbing, unnoticed by the others. Suddenly I realized what Ava meant when she talked about the concert. Sophie asked about our plans, and I mentioned that I had consulted with Amy and let them know within a week before I left. Ignoring Holly's screams as I left, I closed the door behind me.